We all remember years that changed us, for example, 2020 to 2021, maybe even 2025, but none of them compared to the year 536. Just imagine this, you waking up one day and the sun doesn't rise. Not just for a few hours, not because of clouds, but gone, vanished for months. The sky turns a dull, lifeless gray. It stays that way for more than a year. The temperature drops, crops fail, food runs out, people begin to starve, and all across Europe, Asia, and the Middle East, fear spreads like wildfire. It was a year without answers, without warmth, without hope, and historians now agree 536 AD was likely the worst year to be alive in human history. In this video, we are dive deep into what really happened, the strange signs, the volcanic eruptions that blocked out the sun, the suffering that followed, and how this one forbidden year changed the course of history. Because sometimes the darkest times are not the ones we remember, but the ones the world tried to forget. But now we have to remember what really happened in the darkest year in human history. But before we take into deeper, if you don't subscribe to my channel, just subscribe. Okay, let's get started. First of all, it started with complete darkness. The Citani historian named Procopius was serving as the advisor to the renowned general Belisarius. Together, they embarked on a journey to Sicily. Little later, Procopius knew that a trouble was brewing in the air. Quite literally, the general and his advisor observed a strange phenomena. They saw a eerie sun emitting light without its usual brightness. It was more like the pale glow of the moon. After that, it was dark outside all day, every day. And Procopius was not alone in this observation. Others also noticed the sun's moody behavior. It only shined for a few brief hours each day, and then was covered by a mysterious fog. Michael the Syrian, a Macedonian scribe, wrote of the sun's darkness lasting for a staggering 18 months. And this was just the beginning. This strange fog descended upon Europe, the Middle East, and even parts of Asia. Just imagine going through day after day without proper sunlight. At noon, people couldn't even see the shadows on the ground. But this sun situation was just the beginning of 536 despair. But what happened next was the significant temperature drop. People experienced the coldest decade in over 2000 years. With the sun hidden behind an unending cloak of darkness, the Earth's temperature fell by about 4.5 degrees Fahrenheit. Few years later, around 540, it got even colder. Now, let's talk about biology. Plants need the sun and its heat to grow and survive. And guess what happens when they don't get enough of it? Crop output crashed, the result a widespread famine. Ireland, for example, experienced a disastrous bread failure. The Irish chronicles even mention a shortage of bread lasting from 536 to 539, and things were going downhill fast. So, how is the rest of the world doing? Well, let us take a detour to China where things were super crazy. The climate there decided to take a wild turn with unusual phenomena, like dust raining from the skies. Yes, dust. The people describe it as yellow ash falling from above. You could even scoop it into your hands. And the ash not only dimmed the sunlight, but it also destroyed the taste of grapes, turning wine into a sweet disappointment. To make matters worse, Chinese people also experienced a rare weather event with frost in the middle of summer and snowfall in August. Of course, the crops didn't stand a chance against this unexpected cold snap either. The city of Zenya, among others, faced a terrible famine that lasted 2 years and wiped out 70 to 80% of the population. Can you imagine the chaos and desperation that must have ensured? The people of Xenia, once bustling with life and activity, now found themselves in grips of extreme hunger and despair. The streets that were once filled with laughter and chatter were now hauntingly empty. Meanwhile, in a faraway land called Peru, there was a civilization known as the Mochi. Those folks were masters of fishing and had super advanced irrigation systems. They were all about that agricultural life, and guess what? They also suffered greatly in the 6th century. The water got all warm and gozy, and the poor fish couldn't handle it. They just disappeared, leaving the Mochi civilization in a tough spot. Heavy rain fall down like there was no tomorrow, flooding everything inside. The fancy irrigation systems were destroyed, and it was a total mess. They were hit with a famine that was absolutely catastrophic. So we have dark smoke, sudden temperature changes, weird yellow ashes falling from the sky, and so on. You may have already started putting the pieces of the puzzle together. For a long time, historians wondered what caused these terrible events during the so-called Dark Ages. Some experts even believed it might have been caused by something from outer space, like a meteorite or a comet. Pretty wild, right? The truth has come to light in 2050. Scientists analyzed ice cores from the poles and they finally found solid evidence. Of course, it was volcanoes, the fiery stars of all the gloomy tales. It was like Mother Nature declined to play a prank on the whole northern hemisphere. A lot of them were erupting all at once, and no one really knows which ones are what. Anyway, there was at least one eruption in the year 536 and then two more eruptions in 540 and 547. And we know there was at least three volcanic eruptions happening at the same time in North America. Now let us talk about coincidence. The ash and gases from these eruptions went up into the atmosphere and caused all this chaos. They made things much colder, blocking some of the sun's heat from reaching the Earth's surface. It was basically like turning down the temperature knob on the whole planet. This way, they purged the world into what we affectionately call the late antique little ice age. This charming little ice age chilled the planet for at least a decade. But yeah, let's keep going. Remember Constantinople, by the time the 6th century rolled around, the Roman Empire had shifted its base to that city. Emperor Justinian the Great dreamed of restoring the empire's former glory, but fate had some other plans for him. His aspirations were hindered by constant uprising and instability. And then the city faced the wrath of the bubonic plague. The plague ravaged the city and turned it into a smelly nightmare. It was later named the Plague of the Justinian. I think he is a poor emperor, but never mind. Let's back to the topic. The plague spread like wildfire. It infected people from all walks of life, from the lower classes to the imperial palace. It wiped out a estimated 50 million people, which is a staggering one-third to one-two of the population in the East Roman Empire. Oh, and a few years later, in 541, another bubonic plague struck a Roman port in Egypt. Anyway, these catastrophic events, combined with the earlier darkness and extreme cold, caused Europe to sink into economic stagnation, and this stagnation lasted for an entire century. But in the year 640, something exciting happened. Scientists found a lot of silver in the ice, which means that by that year, people were mining silver again. This was a big deal because it showed that the long, difficult time was finally coming to an end. The economy started getting better, and people began using silver instead of gold as their money. Merchants became really important and made a lot of changes in society. It was a time of hope and progress after a dark period. Thanks to these incredible findings, historians now have a new way of understanding the connections between natural disasters and human causes. They even found some new pieces of the Roman Empire's fall puzzle. Now we know more about what caused the empire to fall and the medieval era to rise. So, there you have it, the tale of the year 536. But history has shown us that even in the darkness times, there is a little spark that can light up the future. So let's keep our chins up and remember that even when things seem really tough, there is always a chance for brighter days ahead. So if you like this video, just subscribe, like, share. Bye everyone!